Thank you, Burkhard. Okay, so I mean, a few minutes is very little time to comment on this very comprehensive report, and as you can hear, it's also a very complex field. So what I've done is to look at the document in terms of its more kind of general discourses on AI, meaning I've been reading between the lines concerning what are the core narratives of the document, what does it tell us about the role of AI in society, the relations between humans and technology, and also kind of how does it position itself in these more general discussions. So overall, I really appreciate the grounding in the European Fundamental Rights Framework, that we're not just observing any legal framework and its ethos, like Burkhard called it, the ethos, but that our bias is the core principles and values of this framework. I would have liked here to have a reference maybe to the Council of Europe's ethical charter on the use of artificial intelligence in judicial systems, which is really a very solid resource in this theme. But that aside, this is one out of many really important framings that I see in this draft. I also very much value the times when you emphasize the preservation of human critical agency. So this principle on unfettered public participation that Burkhard also mentioned, that in particular where it objects to legal technology that rules out disobedience, it's really great. Or the principle of temporary contestability, where you refer to the danger when legal technology becomes an infrastructural component that cannot be resisted or changed easily. This is also really good. But there's also some associations to some other narratives that I don't really agree with. And this is where I get to the kind of critical point that we were asked to look at. So for example, the idea that an AI tool can be ethically neutral, or that AI is a new form of regulation, or that an AI system can actually make a decision. I, of course, understand the reference and meaning of this, but I think it's not a discourse we want to really entertain in documents like this. So I also think that we need generally to be more clear in documents like these about things we will not accept. So the red lines, as it's also called. So for example, the use of legal technology to profile individuals, or when analysis and prediction based on quantities of data becomes a norm that is prioritized over, for example, human judgment. Now, to what we could call kind of my main narrative analysis of this document. So the document, of course, it tells us many really essential stories about the role of AI in a human environment, like, for example, our judicial systems. And there's a lot of really good constructive suggestions on how to deal with these. But I'm missing a macro guiding narrative or principle. And I miss generally what I would always include in a document like this on AI in any area or sector. And this is the one where human agency and ethical responsibility and the human environment has a first priority in all processes. Some refer to this as the human-centric approach or principle. We did that in the high-level expert groups document. And I use this term with a lot of very explicit devotion to human judgment and governance and critical situated experience, as opposed to the moral agency of a technological artifact that I would claim can only represent, reproduce, reinforce living things without experiencing critical agency. So for example, the main difference there is between AI bias, because AI is always biased, and human bias is that an AI agent cannot and it does not negotiate its own bias. And this is actually, if you remember Cathy O'Neill's main critique when she describes the danger of the perceived objectivity of, she calls it the systems of math destruction, a really great term. So now in an ideal constellation, law and technology design, they supplement each other. But of course, this is in practice not really the case. So as you do state in the report, AI design is a type of regulator, or it's a moral agent, but it's not a regulation, which is the actual phrase that you're using in the report. And it never should be perceived in this way, because in that phrasing, we lose the very human agency of our laws and legal frameworks that are negotiated and they're written by humans.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, AI design, it can enhance and inhibit law, but the very degree to which it has autonomy in doing this is not an inherent property of AI. It's something we design and something we have power over. And this is what I mean, I think it's the human-centric approach is all about. It's a rule of persons, not machines. This is not my term, it's Frank Pasquale that uses this term. Or we could say in another way, an emphasis on this very degree of autonomy and type of agency that we provide an AI system with and accept from AI systems. So the way it's designed, but also how we imagine it to interact with the human environment. So those are basically just my basic good document, a few critiques. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.